watching live, checking us out on YouTube, or listening on your favorite podcast provider, you are most definitely my people. Welcome to another episode of Botched, and Share Shots. We still have high hopes of delivering quality wrestling content, except not tonight. We're not giving you any wrestling content because tonight it's horror movies and waffles. We're having breakfast for dinner. So, joining me tonight is the Shamanist She Elite. She's the host of Inside the Mind of Storytime with Katie Kinsey, baby. She is co-host of Smackin It Raw. She is the hardest working woman in podcasting and show business. Katie Wrestling. Katie, how are you, dear? Welcome back.
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me after I begged to be on here.
I woke up and Allison was like, hey, Katie's going to be on the show tonight. And I was like, cool. Also tonight, he is the host of the #1 wrestling podcast on the Pornhub. He is Smackin It Raw. He is also the host of the #1 horror podcast on Pornhub, Getting Offed. He is the co-host of Them Dragons. He is part of Creation Conversation. But most importantly, he's my personal Pornhub poppy. He is the Warden Matt Ritter. Mateo, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Glad we talk some more. I've been talking wrestling all fucking week, so let's mix it up.
Let's do this. And for the first time, he is the host of the Getcho Podcast. He is also the co-host and one of those marks with mics. You get it? You see what I did there? Clever, right?
Clever.
Come on, scissor me daddy, Juss.
Come on, that's right. We're here. Getting Off crew is in the building. We're ready to talk some chupacabras.
My Asian twin down there in the corner.
Let's do this. That's right.
And joining the fray tonight, she's not in the Boss Bitches Corner because that's not what we do here. This is a different show. She's just one of the people. She is the Hova to my Beyonce, the Bonnie to my Clyde. She is the Boss Bitch, Miss Allison Siegel. Allison, how are you?
I'm good.
All right, guys. I'm going to ask you, do any of you have anything you're pissed off for greatness for? Anything that's got you worked up? It doesn't even need to be wrestling related tonight. It could be anything. Horror movies, podcasting, social life, somebody at the grocery store. Anything before we dive into the conversation?
I think if I have to just start off it, I think I'm just going to say the endless conversation of WWE being sold to whoever. I think that's too redundant now. I think we need to leave that alone. That was how many weeks? That was like 2 days ago. Let's just leave it where it is. Let's just move on with our lives, people.
Just move on with it. I can agree to that.
I don't know if it counts for today. It was actually kind of yesterday, but it's still in my mind. I'm pissed off at all the different fucking shades of color that there are. So I'm shopping with my wife, and she's looking to paint something, and she's looking at all these shades of color. And I was talking to her, and I said, our cabinets in our kitchen are green. And she goes, no, or not green, gray, sorry. She goes, no, they're blue. And I'm like, well, it's got a blue, but they're gray. And she goes, no. And then we're in the store looking at colors, and she said she wanted to paint something like blue. So I grabbed a light blue, and she goes, oh, no, that's not light blue. And I'm like, that's definitely light blue. And she goes, no, I was thinking something like that. I'm like, that's fucking white. And she goes, no, it's not white, it's blue. That's white. Then she holds them together. I'm like, well, yeah, if you hold it next to like pure white, you can tell that there's blue in it. But when you're looking at all of the blue colors, it looks white. And she goes, you're just colorblind. And I'm like, so, yeah, that.
Love
Okay.
Love that.
Too many fucking shades.
I accept that.
So hold on, not to interrupt, but you're basically throwing shade at shades.
Yes, I'm throwing shade at shades.
Throwing shade at shades.
As I'm in a gray room.
Yeah.
Is it gray or is it blue?
It looks.
Is it
No,
blue?
It's gray. It's gray.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Questioning all of reality.
That looks blue.
Blue.
It looks
It
gray.
looks blue because of the lighting in here, but it's definitely gray. It even said gray on the color when I picked it out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. I have one, and it's topical because of the episode. It's the amount of good horror I see on TikTok and YouTube shorts that aren't available in my region in the United States. I feel like there was a movie, I think maybe you and I talked about it, Matt, on one of the previous episodes. It was, it's banned in the U.S. and can't get released on Netflix, but it's got, well, I can't remember the name of it. But it's one of those where you get really hyped, you see the story, then you find it, then you realize it's not available in your region. Like, that's what pisses me off. The movie is null and void. It doesn't matter. But, yeah, that's what has me pissed off for greatness. But what brings us here tonight, The Conjuring. Okay. Over the time, there's been 9 movies, 8 released, 1 in post-production. A crew of cast of directors, cinematographers, producers. The Conjuring, Conjuring 2, The Devil Made Me Do It, Annabelle Creation, Annabelle Homecoming, The Nun, The Curse of... Matt, help me pronounce it.
Wow, I'm fucking it up.
Rona.
La Riona.
La Llorona?
Yes, there you go.
La Llorona. And then The Nun 2, which is coming out later this year. Ton of movies, ton of time. It would be forever if we broke it down individually, so I've kind of got some talking points for us to work through. The initial thoughts process, though, I'm going to ask each one of you a question. Matt, I'm going to start with you. Who do you think the stories portray Ed and Lorraine Warren to be?
Who do I think the stories portray them to be?
Yeah.
Ed and Lorraine Warren?
Yeah.
That's who I think they portray them to. I mean, so I know they took liberties with some of the accounts and everything like that for cinematic effect and all that, but essentially, I mean, if you want me to describe who Ed and Lorraine Warren in the movies are and their relationship to each other, they're a Christian couple who are absolutely head over heels in love, who have embarked on this journey to investigate and, in some cases, rid the world of evil spirits, or I guess in the third movie, evil people. Because she was witch. So, but they're paranormal investigators who are heavy into the religious aspect of it with the exorcisms and the Bibles and things. And they're supposed to just be good people who want to help those who can't get help. In some cases, they're there on behalf of the church to kind of debunk this stuff. And sometimes the church is like, yeah, cool, like, let's do it. And sometimes you're like, we might not be able to get involved. And they're like, oh, well, then I guess we're going to have to do it ourselves. So.
All right, Katie. Who do you think the Warrens were in real life? Like, how much, I guess what I'm asking is, how much of the fictional movies we saw, how much do you think was that copied over into real life for us?
I mean, I can say with probably, 100% certainty that, the love and devotion they had for each other, 100% there. Real life and in the movies. I would say probably, the majority of their portrayal in the movies was, them in real life, because I know Lorraine was on the set for the first movie. So she definitely got to, see how things were going.
Doesn't she have cameos in multiple movies in the universe? At least the Conjuring series?
I don't know.
I'll look it up.
I know for certain she was behind the scenes on the first one, possibly the second. But I also don't remember when she died. So then that plays into it too.
2019.
2019. So then she was probably on the set for the first two. The third one, obviously, not. But I want to say, it's probably, mostly what you see is what you get. But then with, just a hint of movie magic kind of shit.
Or the portrayal is how because, again, you have to look at it as, if she's there saying this is how things were, this is how we were, that is her viewpoint of their relationship, looking back on it after her husband passed, and of fondness and everything. So it may be through rose-colored glasses of how everything went, because now these are memories of her and someone she loved and so on and so forth. So it could also be a little skewed from her point of view, if she had any input on her character or the relationship between the characters.
True.
All right. Miss Siegel, how much truth is there in the gray area between the way Matt was explaining kind of who they were in the stories and how Katie kind of started painting the picture of who they were in real life. Excuse me. How much of the truth in that gray area, that in between, are there? Because you were talking earlier when we were watching one of the movies about the suspicion and rumors and stuff like that. Kind of the rabbit hole that you went down there.
Yeah, so like since the movies have come out, this woman who's in her 70s now tried to sue Warner Brothers for the story not being actually true or based on truth, because she said that she started a relationship with Ed when she was 15 in the 60s and lived with them for 40 years in this sort of like relationship with the two of them. And other people have come out and sued them about certain things, and then like being a hoax. Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, with every paranormal activity investigator or paranormal investigator, or whatever, that they're always, especially once popularity is gained, you'll see the same thing in religion with pastors and things like that, and it's a lot of the time there is truth behind it, but they always come under question for their intentions and whether or not what they're doing is real, so on and so forth. The more notoriety you get, the more people dig into things and question things and try and poke holes in things, but that also kind of leads into what I said at the end of Katie answering her question, whereas if Lorraine had poetic license to kind of help build who these characters were through her eyes, obviously this is how she wanted to see her and her husband's relationship presented. She's going to leave out the 15-year-old girl that lived with them and slept with her husband, so on and so forth. Like, that's not something that she's going to want in there, because she's probably not going to like how that looks to the public.
Yeah. I believe the lawsuit ended up getting dropped. But yeah, she was specifically suing Warner Brothers. They either dropped or settled, I can't remember. But she was specifically suing Warner Brothers, which I found interesting, and not Lorraine and the family directly.
I got to give Will credit, because honestly, I was so confused as to where this line of questioning was going, and I was like,
Yeah,
how high
so
did he
was
get
I.
before the show? Like, what is going on here?
6 foot tall.
I think the person you're talking about is Judith Penny.
That one.
Really just look this up.
I was looking for
That's what I
had to-
lawsuits. I didn't realize they got sued for over $900 million for the guy who did the Warrens TV show in the 90s. Warner Brothers paid out $900 million in rights to get the rights to the Warrens stuff, and I had no idea that happened. That was in 2017, so that was 2 movies in, and they spent almost $1 billion to get the rights to all the Warrens, everything that has to do with them. Apparently, I was just reading about it. Juss, rounding out the initial thoughts of who the Warrens were. You got the unlucky draw, because everybody else is this question's going to come up later for everybody else. Do you think the Warrens are the anchor characters in the Conjuring universe? I'm putting you on the spot first before everybody else.
Interesting. I mean, it's like I would have to feel like when something is always happening, they're always there, right? So I kind of have to agree, like, they're the anchor of why these like demons or whatever have come. Like maybe when they were trying to get rid of something else came through, the whatever you want to say, the ghost portal, if you want to say the ghost Stargate. You know what I'm saying? Like something has come through there on the midst of them trying to get rid of something. So I would have to agree and say yes, the Warrens are the anchor.
All right, so let's dive into the series then, and start looking at it, who the Warrens are, and how the series gets going. Instead of, like I said, it's not, with it having 9 films, the amount of time we could do if we dissected every single movie, it would take a long, long time. So what I want to do is, I want to look at it in The Conjuring, and then we're going to look at Annabelle, then we're going to look at the 3 spin-offs. So looking at the 3 Conjuring movies first, because it's kind of a woven web on how all of these stories intertwine with each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of paint a picture and then kind of put it together chronologically as we go. Because the 3 Conjuring movies don't take place in chronological order. Matt, you're going to tee it off. The first Conjuring movie, it starts with a snippet of Annabelle at the very beginning, who doesn't come out until that's actually the second movie in the series, but not the second movie in the Conjuring series. Conjuring came out in 2013, Annabelle came out in 2014.
Right.
So let's start diving into the first Conjuring series, introducing who Annabelle was, introducing the Warrens, and going from there.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the movie kicks off. It's 2 young girls who apparently have not grown up past playing with dolls. Get a doll, and that doll decides it's gonna play with them, and it scares the shit out of them. Literally writes on a piece of paper, "Play with me," like. And so they call the Warrens, and the Warrens come in, and they're like, "Yeah, there's something fucked up about that doll. We're gonna take it with us." And that was really just to kind of set the basis of, I think, because the Annabelle doll, which was actually a Raggedy Ann doll, is one of the most famous artifacts so they knew everyone was going to ask about that, but that's not the story they wanted to tell right off the bat. But it also helped them, as you said, build out this universe. So we've introduced it, we've got it out of the way, it's there. They used a far more creepy doll than a Raggedy Ann doll to do this. And then we move on to what the actual story that we're telling is, which is the family who moves into a house that is on a land where a witch hung herself and cursed the land and is infected the families that have lived on that land, the mothers, causing them, to hurt themselves and kill their children and do all of these terrible things. And we see this very happy family, clearly happy because they've got so many goddamn kids, they must never stop bugging. Jesus Christ. I could not imagine living in a house with like that many daughters and my wife. Just like it would drive me crazy in the middle of nowhere. And I love my wife and I love my daughters, don't get me wrong, or my daughter, don't get me wrong.
Daughter. Whoa.
Well, yeah, just one for now. But yeah, they move in, everything's supposed to be nice and happy. We got this house, it's big enough for us, and it's gonna be hard, but we're gonna make it work. And then scary shit starts happening and they have to call for help. And the mother, who again, tie-in, so the mother goes to see a seminar that the Warrens are giving where they are talking about a young man who was possessed, who happens to be the young man that gets possessed by the nun at the end of the Nun, up on the screen. And they that also leads to that. And then she stops and she talks to them and explains, and they come out and they check everything out. And they're like, "Oh yeah, no, upside down, crosses and things happening and knocking and all. None of this is good. We're going to move in for a little while and help you figure this shit out." Bathsheba then eventually possesses a mother and sends her after her daughter. And there's always a little trinket hidden in the wall somewhere that is possessed and allows the spirit. And they find the little music thingy. And yeah.
Katie, when you watch movies like The Conjuring, like, I guess what I'm going to ask is, do movies like this scare you? Are you a supernatural scare, or are you like a realistic scare? Do like Jeffrey Dahmer style scary stuff scare you because he was a real person, real life, or does the supernatural stuff give you the heebie-jeebies more than normal?
Both.
Okay, so just a scary in general.
Yeah, so like I firmly believe in the supernatural stuff. Ghosts are fucking real. That's a point I will make right now. So that always scares me. Like Paranormal Activity scared the shit out of me for the longest time as a kid. So like that stuff scares me. But then like real life stuff, yeah, because people are actually terrifying because they are crazy. So that scares me, but I think the supernatural stuff scares me just a little bit more, I guess.
So during the recent rewatch of The Conjuring, this is a question for all of you, and this is a tie-in to Getting Offed, because wrestling podcasts also exist in the same multiverse. I noticed, the first thing I noticed when I was rewatching it was the clocks ticked off at 3:07. How the fuck did the ghost in the house know that it was 3:07? Like, because that was the first thing that came to mind. I remember that conversation you guys had on getting off. And then I immediately wrote it down, and I was like, this is going to be a reoccurring thing in every horror movie conversation I have for the rest of my existence, is how do ghosts know what time zone it is?
Exactly. And it's not so much like how did the ghost know it's 3:00. It's they say that 3:00 is the devil's hour, the witching hour. It's when all the scary shit happens. But 3:00 for us is different than 3:00 for Katie. So I never got my answer from TikTok, by the way. Like, everyone's like, oh, well, they died in that time zone, so they go by that time zone, or well, like whatever. But I never really got like an expert answer. No one came out and could tell me, like, you know, if somebody who lived their entire life in Pennsylvania died in Chicago right when they got there, are they going to start fucking shit up at 4 a.m. thinking it's 3? Like, I never got my answer.
I don't have an answer for
Yeah,
that.
and the woman that, you know, the witch that killed herself on the property, like, that was in the 1800s. Like, was there daylight savings time? Like, this is the 60s. I forget when daylight savings time started. Like, you know.
And if you even look at it from the, you know, the astrological side of it, about that's when the energy is there and the spirits can enter Earth. If you look at it from an energy perspective, then that has nothing to do with time zones. That's just in that moment. So if it's 3:07 in the morning and it's dark in Rhode Island, then that means on the other side of the world, spooky shit's happening in the middle of the fucking day. It's like 2:00 in the afternoon and like shit's getting knocked off the counter and stuff. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
there has to be some logic here, and until somebody gets us answers, I'm going to bring it up on every spooky conversation I have.
So I have a question. When did the witch hung herself?
307.
Hang yourself?
I know, but what year? Do you remember the year?
So looking at the story, like just kind of to going along with it, stylistically compared to the other ones, do you think that when they started it, they had a $20 million budget? By the end of the movie, they're shooting with $150, $200 million budget. Did you think this is one of those series, like watching it, I didn't tell a difference. Like it didn't seem like from one movie to the other, they did a whole lot that really changed what they were doing. Sort of, as you get into The Nun and stuff like that with more of the CGI stuff. But like, what did you guys think stylistically from movie to movie as they go? Because they start with a lower budget, then get more expensive.
I'll just answer real quick. To me, I think the Conjuring movies are kind of all the same within the same budget. I think. With like, you know, 2 and 3, they kind of had a little bit more money to play with, but they didn't go far away from the formula of what made them successful, right? But like the Nun, Annabelle, you know, they definitely spent money, and you know, give or take, you know, some of the graphics kind of took you out of the movie depending on what you think graphics should look like. So I think, in particular, I think the Nun has like kind of like the more money, but like it's kind of a weak graphics. I don't know if y'all agree, but that's just me.
I mean,
Were you gonna say something else?
Oh, I was going to say, it was 1863 that she killed herself.
Okay, 1863. Okay. Well, the reason why I asked that question is because Modern Time was made in 1884. So maybe she had known something that Modern Time was going to exist, so she knew it was going to be 3. I'm just saying, that's all I'm
She wasn't
20
Witch.
years before we made the man-made construct that is time, she knew about it because she was a witch
hey,
and figured it
we
out.
don't know. We don't know.
Egypt
gonna
was
say
using it in
something.
1500 BC, so I'm just, you know, if we're just throwing out, you know, stats, I'm just saying.
What I was gonna say is that, I mean, yeah, like the 3 Conjuring movies, I mean, the 4th one will probably end up being the same. They add like a little bit more like graphic CGI, and they kind of amp it up each movie. It's not like insane, but I mean, I feel like it's a good like escalation. Like the first one's pretty mild. Second one, shit gets a little wilder. Third one, fucking witches popping up out of nowhere. And
Yeah.
crazy. So I mean, I think they're subtle enough, but they're not. It's not like terrible. Like I think they do like a good like progression with the budgets, I guess.
Like a good balance.
Do you think they need the extra stuff? Because The Conjuring is kind of like the base of all the other stories. It's the the foundation that the nun came off of, that Annabelle was the vessel, but it was the story of the Warrens that made Annabelle what it was. So do you think they were the foundation? So they didn't necessarily need all the extra stuff because of that, because those three movies are very different than the other three. Like, I get, not stylistically in a ways, but they don't have as much, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, do you think it's because they were kind of setting the foundation of who Ed and Lorraine were for the rest of the movies?
Maybe.
So, James Wan directed the first movie, and I am a huge fan of James Wan, and then he's produced every movie since. So I feel like even as a producer, with the feel of the movie and the look and everything that we're talking about here, he had a hand in that, even if he wasn't directing, especially as a producer and how much goes into it and so on and so forth. So I feel like that's why, whether you start with $20 million or you're at $150 million by the end, as you're watching it, it doesn't feel very different, because you still have that master at the helm kind of guiding things and correcting things as they go and saying, okay, let's try this, let's add a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but keeping the same feel. I'm not like Katie. I feel like I could take Dahmer in a fight, but the paranormal shit freaks me the fuck out. Well, no, because you said like real life stuff and ghosts freak you out.
Yeah.
I feel like I could take a serial killer. Like, in a fight for my life, I think I would survive, as long as it's not like a supernatural Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, some undead being. Like, if it's just a dude, I think I could win. So that doesn't really freak me out. I feel like I could handle myself. Like, if there's an intruder in my house, stranger, shit like that. The paranormal stuff freaks me out because you can't, like, they're throwing shit across a room. There's no defending that. Like, you can't grab them and hold them down and stop them from doing this shit. So that's where that creepiness creeps in for me. Especially one of my favorite scenes in the entire franchise was from the first movie with the Perron family, where they're doing the exorcism in the basement before they get the okay, because they have to do it now. And she's doing all the shit and throwing everyone across the room and trying to murder everyone from her chair. And you see Bathsheba emerge from her and her change. Like, I love it. So.
Yeah, I agree. The normal stuff. Well, you know what? I would say this. Both things scare me. Normal and paranormal, you know?
I appreciate the normal stuff, because that's what, like, the whole idea that these normal everyday guys are the ones that are going to run up and get us. But also the paranormal stuff seems, that's what's extra creepy, because it's almost like you don't have any control over what's happening with it. You don't have any control over any of that. Let's go ahead and move on.
Matt has a question.
What's up, Mateo? I'm sorry.
Well, we have an expert in the chat that we didn't use when we were talking about. So, Bobby, you were alive before time zones were created. Now, after, how did that work for you, and how did you figure them out? As someone who's experienced both periods of time, I'm curious.
He said first in the chat.
But yeah.
The paranormal definitely is scarier to me. Like, I prefer to watch like supernatural scary movies versus like, I'm just gonna stab you. Because to me, like, that's not scary, it's just gross. I want to, if I'm gonna watch a scary movie, like, I want to be scared, like, holy fuck, this is gonna happen.
Bobby says it keeps him young.
Well, he said he always goes backwards, so his year has 600 plus days. That's what keeps him young.
The same as Hogan, right?
Yeah.
So, looking at the second one, when they moved to the second one, we get a snippet at the beginning, same as Annabelle. We get the snippet of what comes to be in The Devil Made Me Do It. But during the second one, we get the equivalent of what is the English Amityville Horror, right? That's kind of the gist of it. It's an English family. They got a farmhouse. The Hodgins or Hodgkins? Hodgins family?
I
The
didn't
beginning
think
of 2 is
the original
Amityville Horror.
Is that Amityville Horror? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Then I wrote that down in my notes wrong. I apologize. Correction. Amityville Horror. Then they go to England for the family. And
that is correct.
The infill poltergeist. It's very equation. You know, you've got the Warrens, you've got a spooky ghost, they perform an exorcism to save the family. Looking at this one, did you find it more or less scary than the first one? And I know that seems like a weird, like, not a weird question on a horror podcast, but like, did you like the second one more than the first one, just based purely off of the horror tactics? I felt like they were a little bit more jump scary with the second one.
Not at first, but I think I like it as much as the first one now. So I felt like the ending of 2 with the nun and the way that she fought off Valak was kind of anticlimactic. I felt like it ended really shortly compared to what we got in the first one with the exorcism of Bathsheba and all of that stuff. I was like, oh, but as you watch it and you notice more things and you see more things and you pay attention to, and as the universe grows and progresses and everything, I feel like I have a different appreciation for it. Also, there's a small little piece of me that really loves The Conjuring 2 because so my wife wanted to dance to I Can't Help Falling in Love with You by Elvis at our wedding. And that is a song that Ed plays for them. And that is why I agreed to it, because it had a horror movie connection. I'm like, I'm good. So we danced to that song by Elvis at our wedding.
Nice.
So now every time I watch that movie and I hear Ed sing it, which I tried to get her to find a version of Ed singing it to dance to, but we couldn't do that. But it reminds me of dancing with my wife at my wedding. So as weird as that sounds for a horror movie about a family whose daughter is possessed and trying to kill them all, every time I watch it, I think of my first dance with my wife at our wedding.
One of the best scenes in the movie, that's why.
And shout out, your wife's birthday was last Sunday too, so.
On the 8th, yes.
Yep.
Fantastic. Happy birthday. We also got introduced to the Crooked Man in the second one. Like, I don't know how to segue from that. I don't know what the fuck to do. I'm just going to jump right into it. Like, the introduction of the Crooked Man, they always got the trinkets and everything that the Warrens take away from it. What did you think about how they tied that in with the Crooked Man and where he was, and when you found out through the storyline as it appeared who the Crooked Man was? You see what I'm like? The way that story worked throughout the movie. What did you think about that?
I guess it wasn't crooked. It just, falls in line. I thought it was okay. I mean, you know what? To kind of jump back to the last question, I wasn't as scared as as this one as I was from part 1 to part 2. I did like it was more story involvement because they're trying to attach the whole thing with the nun and everything that happened. So to me, yeah, I kind of like what they were doing with the Crooked Man.
So, Will, are you getting that? Because there were rumors, I don't know if it's still going to happen, but there were rumors that they were going to make a Crooked Man, like a separate movie featuring the Crooked Man.
Correct.
I don't know if there is going to be.
I hope there's not, because he wasn't really a thing. Like, he was Valak. And mind you, I think Valak is the creepiest thing in James Wan's entire universe, looks-wise. The nun outfit, the eyes, all of that. So that's another thing I will give to them. Bathsheba looked like her turning into whatever, but like that, and especially the way they do it in later movies with like the portraits and things, and creepy as shit. But when I heard that they were going to make a Crooked Man movie, I was like, how? Because all she was doing was using the old man as kind of her conduit to scare these people, but she was creating all of these visions and things, the Crooked Man, and making all of these things happen and possessing the old man and all this stuff. So he wasn't really like, it made sense for the nun because the nun is a demon and there was a story there. But if the nun was portraying something from this kid's toy and brought it to life, is it the Nun 2, the Crooked Man, where she's just decided she's going to be the Crooked Man going forward? Like, I'm done with religion. Like, I don't know. I didn't feel like there was a need for it.
Yeah.
In the movie itself, it works and it's creepy and it's fun, and I like the little rhyme that goes with it and all of that. And it's to help the kid with a speech impediment.
Billy.
Yes, Billy.
With his stutter.
Yeah.
This one.
I'm happy they're not gonna. There was talks that there was gonna be a Crooked Man, but last time I saw there wasn't.
It was listed as part of like the Conjuring Universe because apparently at one point they were talking about making like a short film
Okay.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but
It just feels like they're trying to capitalize on that viral what was it? The tall, skinny
Slender Man.
Slender Man. There you
Yes,
go.
that's exactly what I was gonna say.
When I chose this initially, I was like, I really liked the Annabelle series. I just saw the third Conjuring for the first time not too long ago and rewatched it. I didn't realize it was very Fast and the Furious for me when I realized how many movies were tied into this universe and how much was going on with it. I was like, what did I sign up for? Because there were a couple where I was like, I had to rewatch some of them. And the second one was one of them where I wasn't super familiar with the story. I'd only seen it like once or twice. It did double the budget from the first one. And as somebody who asked about it, like, what do you think from progression from movie to movie? I didn't see a double in CGI or a double in production value or anything like that from movie to movie. To go from a $20 million to a $40 million budget. For me, this didn't show that gap and that jump.
Something cool about this though is so you can watch it in release order and you can get the story and everything's cool, kind of like the MCU, but also like the MCU, there's a chronological order that you can watch this in that
Yes.
gives you a whole different perspective of the movie. Like if I were to sit down with someone for the first time, I would watch it with them in chronological order because I'm sure we're about to talk about it. But when I first sat down and watched the first Annabelle movie, I did not love it. Then they did Annabelle Origins and it was Annabelle Creation and then Annabelle Comes Home. Yeah. And those two I loved. And the way that they tied it in at the end to make it make sense for what the first Annabelle movie was, then into The Conjuring and all that. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Now I like this movie more. But the first time it came out, I wasn't really feeling it. But if you watch it in that chronological order and you have Annabelle, I think if you technically did it, it would be like parts of The Nun and then Annabelle Creation and so on and so forth, and you'd work your way through. But I can't do like start a movie and then stop it and go watch another movie and then come back to it later. That's fucking stupid. That's just ridiculous.
The Nun has gaps. I pulled up the universe for the timeline when you started talking, Matt. So The Nun has gaps between The Nun and Annabelle Creation, and then between Annabelle Creation and Annabelle, then between Annabelle and The Conjuring, then The Conjuring, Annabelle Comes Home, The Curse, then more from The Nun, then The Conjuring 2, then more from The Nun, then The Conjuring 3. So you'd literally have to watch The Nun in like 6 different periods to get it all to intertwine with the rest of the movies.
No, thank you.
So as wrestling podcasters, the lot of us here, the term long-term storytelling is something we talk a lot about. Do you think the fact that we're looking down the barrel of 9 movies now, do you think a producer, a director, a writer needs to have movies spread out over 50 years to tell the whole story? Was there anything in this timeline where you're like, we could have done without this, or this could have been shorter maybe?
Well, I guess it depends if you're doing it from a wrestling angle like that. So then, are the Warrens the Universal Champion? Are they the
Warrens
double?
are the bloodline, and the
Okay,
demon
the Warrens are
is
the
Vince
bloodline. Okay.
McMahon.
Okay, so the Demons is Vince McMahon. Okay, so then the Nun, technically, I guess you could say would be Kevin Owens at this point, or is that?
God. What is even happening
That's
here?
exactly what it is. The Nun is Kevin
Okay,
Owens.
okay.
You're good, Juss.
Okay. So then I guess you could say. Okay, so then I guess I don't know when would they stop. I mean, I guess if there's so many materials that the Warrens have to use, then I guess they could keep telling that story. Just like how everyone's enjoying Roman Reigns. Why make him lose?
Well, I'm pretty sure the next Conjuring movie that's coming out, which is the 4th one, is the last one.
Which is kind of a bummer because they gave us Annabelle Comes Home, and in it we got a bunch of different things, the boatman and the bride and that samurai suit and the little clapping monkey and the TV. Like they showed us all of these things. Each one could be its own story because this isn't, I don't know if they feel like it is, but this isn't something that needs to go chronologically. You can tell all of these different stories from the Warrens' lives and get all of these movies out. See, I love franchises. I do. I love Friday the 13th, Saw, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween is my favorite. Like, I love continuity. I love being in this universe, and it is absolutely something that could have carried on and gone on. To jump the gun a little bit, since he already asked Justin, who's below me on my screen. I don't know where he is for you guys. I guess he's down to the left. But to maybe jump the gun, the Warrens are absolutely the linchpin. And once you stop making Conjuring movies, then it makes it hard to start bringing in new ghosts, demons, spirits, characters, whatever, into the franchise. Because this is not a franchise that I think can be taken off by like a priest from the convent, or possibly I'm blanking out, the sister from the nun grown up, and like that's all of this is based and then spun off from what is created around the Warrens. And I get that Vera Farmiga and I'm blanking
Patrick
out on
Wilson.
his name as well too. Yeah, yes, Patrick Wilson are probably getting a little old, and as the years go on, it's going to be harder and harder to bring them back to do these movies. You could recast them as younger and do some younger things with them. Like, there are options, but once you stop making Conjuring movies, then you stop kind of progressing this universe. It's going to kind of kill the universe. So they're definitely the linchpins.
100%.
Looking at Allison, this is I'll start with you here. One of my questions was the drawing power of the series, and Matt was just speaking on that with the amount of stuff in the Warrens museum and stuff. Somebody who comes from a marketing perspective, did they write this specifically so they had an open-ended way of going with it? Because you've seen it. You were talking about, what's the guy, Baggins?
Zach
Baggins. He bought like a third of their collection at one point a couple years ago after her death, which included the Annabelle doll. Do you think this was kind of an open-ended way for the writers to have like a never-ending story of movies for this franchise, like from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, I definitely think that they could. I mean, there's so many different stories and different things, from the Warrens that I think, are lesser known that could be really good tales. Like, honestly, they could do, instead of doing full-length movies, they could do like a series where, it's like, each individual artifact, if they don't have, if it's not enough for a whole story, but still a good story to tell, like, they could do things like that. I think it would be really cool. I know that Zach Baggins used to have a show about his museum in Vegas, where he would talk about all the different artifacts and different things that he has. One of the reasons he has the Annabelle doll is that him and Lorraine got close, like, before she died. Like, she came on the show several times. Like, she felt like he was the correct person to take care of that doll and it not do terrible things. So, no, I think it'd be really cool. And from a marketing standpoint, people eat this shit up. Whether people believe it's a hoax, not a hoax, whatever, it's interesting that, like, everything has a trinket,
Yeah.
But I think it'd be cool.
I mean, I've been to that museum in Vegas. Like, I've been to Zach Bagan's Haunted Museum.
Oh,
and
shit.
That shit's fucking creepy.
Yeah, so you seen the doll and everything?
Yes.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen everything. It's fucking creepy. Like, the rocking chair moves on its own. I don't remember if it did or not when I was there. It's been like 2 years. I don't really remember. But yeah, like that. Zach Bagans is very much like, he gathers things from like serial killers and like the Warrens, and he preserves them, I guess. Like, you literally go in there, you can't touch a single thing, you can't take pictures of anything. Like, your phone has to like be in a pocket, or they'll like take it and kick you out.
Oh, wow. That's serious.
Well, yeah. Demons, Justin.
Hey, listen, hey. I was gonna say, he reminds me of the character from Guardians, the Collector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say.
Matt,
Can
you
I
look
answer
like you have
Bobby's
something to
question real
say.
quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, Chucky versus Annabelle would not work. And part of the reason, and that's a great transition into the Annabelle movie, is that Annabelle itself is not possessed by a person or a serial killer or anything.
Right.
It's actually kind of puppeteered by a demon. And that's what kind of turned me off when I watched Annabelle for the first time, was finding out that the entity wasn't actually living inside the doll and making the doll walk around and move and do things, but it was kind of behind the doll, manipulating, like moving it from place to place. But it wasn't, the doll itself wasn't actually doing it. It doesn't get up, it doesn't talk. It's a demon puppeteering the doll outside of its body. And that was initially the original turnoff, because that's not where I thought this was going. I thought it was at least encased in the doll and working through the doll, not just using it to freak people out and try and steal their children and possess their children. But they correct it later on.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into Annabelle. Looking over that series as a whole, it divides up. You're right. It's kind of the vessel for the story. And mine, I said when I was talking and planning this, I said my take on the most important entity or person throughout the series was the demon or the spiritual side of it, because that was the part of the story that kind of found itself intertwined through the entire series. It wasn't necessarily one person, one thing. So I think Annabelle, the nun, and Annabelle are all kind of tied together with who this demon is, I guess, is the best way to put it, right? No, the nun was a different one, and then the one who took over Annabelle was separate.
Correct.
But the entity, the idea of the, I don't want to say the supernatural. That seems like a really phoned in way to do this. But I feel like the demons from every specific story, because it was all about the control of the supernatural and being able to progress it. And when you get into the Annabelle series, this is where you get into that question of the vessel of what Annabelle was to the Warrens when she got brought in. We're going to do this one out of chronological orders in the way they were released. We're going to do them chronologically in the way the story makes sense. So it's the story of Annabelle being made, the guy who makes her, and everything happening with his family, and his daughter dies, and like everything tied into it allows for that doll to be passed along, and then it's the story of Annabelle. What did you think about this series, Katie, when you watched the Conjuring Universe? Where did you rank it amongst the Conjuring movies? Did you prefer the Conjuring or did you prefer Annabelle?
I prefer the Conjuring movies, but like I have nothing like against the Annabelle movies. Like I just watched the first one and the second one today. Well, I didn't get to finish the second one because I had to come back and do the interview. But yeah, like it's interesting to see the history of Annabelle, like seeing the doll get made and see what happened with the daughter, and then leading into the first movie with like the Manson family ties and the satanic stuff. So I mean, like I said, I prefer the Conjuring movies, but the Annabelle movies are really cool because they give you more history into like why the fuck Annabelle, this doll, is creepy and scary and terrifying.
You haven't seen any of the Annabelles yet, have you, Al? I'm sorry, Katie.
I was like, nobody's talking.
I was reading something, sorry. I haven't seen the Annabelle movies, but I do know a lot about, because so several years ago, like, I went down this huge rabbit hole of, like, I started watching Zach's show, Ghost Adventures. And so, like, I went down this whole rabbit hole about the Warrens. So I know a lot about, like, their story and those things, and, like, the medieval horror, and, like, so I know, like, a lot about, like, them. And I know a lot about, like, Annabelle. Like, the movies like are cool. Dolls are always creepy. Honestly,
Facts.
I feel like if they had kept it the doll that it was supposed to be, the Raggedy Ann doll, honestly, that's creepier to me than this porcelain doll. Because, like, I'm sorry, like, if I saw that porcelain doll, I would have thrown it in the trash. Like, immediately.
They did.
Tried.
It came
tried
out.
to do all kinds of things.
Yes.
Well,
But yeah,
but like,
but she didn't see it, so it's okay.
yeah. But like, based on like what y'all said, like that it wasn't the doll that was possessed; it was somebody like moving the doll, like having a creation story of a doll that's not actually the possessed object, like doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense.
Well, here, let me see if I can help you with that. So in Annabelle Creation, which is actually the second Annabelle movie, there is a father who has a daughter who he makes dolls. That is his job. And he's a great doll maker. He's highly regarded, blah, blah, blah. His daughter dies in a tragic way, and then they're distraught. The last doll that he made ends up, kind of being solace and comfort to them. And the wife is trying to contact the spirit of her daughter, and they accidentally invite a demon into the doll,
okay, that makes sense.
into the family, thinking that it is their daughter that is doing these things. Then when they figure out that's not it, they board it up in their daughter's old room in a closet filled with Bible verses and hope that it never escapes. And then make the brilliant idea to allow orphans who are being looked over by nuns to come and move in and stay with them, because he thinks his wife, who's been sick and all this, it might help having a child in the house again. It might help him, it might help her. So they invite all of these orphans, these little girl orphans, into the house, one of which is crippled from polio. Was it polio? Yeah, that's a thing, right? Bobby, you had that once. So she had polio, so her legs are all messed up, and she can't play with the other girls. So they kind of lead you to believe that the girl that is going to get possessed is one of her friends, not actually the girl that does get possessed, but because she's the one that finds the doll and goes in the room and all of this. But eventually the demon transfers itself to this little girl. This little girl then gets adopted and moves in, or lives with his family, joins a Manson-like cult, comes back, kills her family, lives next door to the people who... So the wife is pregnant and she collects dolls, and this is like a doll that she's always wanted. So her husband finds the doll, sans demon, like just the demon left. It's in the little girl now. He happens to find the exact same doll, gets it for his wife. Manson demon possessed woman comes over, attacks her, then in a suicide ritual puts the demon back in the doll, and now the demon is back in the doll, living with these people, causing all sorts of trouble until they get rid of it, and then it goes to the nurses, and then ends up with the Warrens, and then stuff happens with the Warrens in the third movie where babysitters and babysitters' friends like to play with shit they shouldn't play with and unleash all sorts of hell across the house.
Yeah.
Was the third one like Babysitter's Club? Because when I watched it, I was like, this is like if Nickelodeon made a horror movie, I feel like. Because it was like a bunch of teenagers doing exactly what their parents told them not to do.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, that's kind of how it came across to me. It was like, hey, we're going to let you guys stay here. You know you're not supposed to go in that room, right? And like, how come their daughter didn't put up more of a fight? She's at this point, she's old enough to know right from wrong.
But she has no friends. Nobody likes her. They think she's creepy. So this is somebody who, her babysitter is someone who's nice to her. It's the closest thing she has to a friend, and her babysitter's best friend also the same way. And you can kind of tell, like, even though he's mean to her, she kind of has a crush on the babysitter's friend's little brother, who's the one that's mainly picking on her at school. So like, there's that, like, she doesn't want to go against the grain and again be singled out as this weird kid that no one wants to talk to, and lose the only real relationships or kind of friendships she feels she has, which is why she doesn't put up more of a fight, even though, and at her age, I don't think she fully grasps the severity of all of the evil shit that is locked away. Like, you hear it, like, you're told don't stick your finger in the light socket, but until you stick your finger in the light socket, you don't really understand why they keep telling you not to do it. You just know you're not supposed to do it. Then one time, you stick your finger in there and it zaps you, and you're like, oh, okay, that's why.
So the bigger question here is, if you found yourself in the position as the babysitter's friend, would the curiosity get the cat? Would you guys go into the museum? Would you touch the stuff? Would you try to channel the demons to talk to somebody? Even if the friend, like, you're looking at it from the fan's perspective, like she was trying to talk to her dad. Even if something
because of the severe guilt of the fact that she crashed the car that her dad died in, and she has felt guilty this entire time that she killed her dad, and she just wants to apologize. and talk to her dad one last time because she is overburdened with grief and guilt and feeling like she's the one that was the reason her dad, or she's the reason her dad died.
Like, I would go in. There ain't no fucking way I'm touching anything in there. No shot.
Let alone everything. What did you touch? Everything.
Yeah, like, why the fuck are you touching every single object? Like,
I
you
mean,
know
I
what the
probably
Warrens
would have
do?
went in front of the mirror and like danced or crip walk a little bit, but I would not touch. I would have not touched anything. But that's it though. Like, I mean, some of those artifacts, like you guys saw them in person, right, Katie? So like, they're like
Yeah,
creepy
I
as
saw a
hell.
few. Yeah.
So like, I don't even think that a normal person would
Just like
dare to do anything.
anything that's haunted or is rumored to be haunted or has some type of evil in it, because like she knows who the Warrens are and
Oh,
what
that's
they
right,
do.
yeah.
What? No, don't touch.
She knows that
spooky
they
things.
can contact spirits and that there is something in the house that might allow her a chance to apologize to her dad and tell her that she's sorry. Like, she doesn't know the history behind every object or what every object is. She just knows that one of these could be a way for her to talk to her dad. So she tried a little bit of everything. Also, this is a fantastic horror trope where even though technically like Laurie Strode was a dirty blonde in the movie, like a very light brunette, there's always like a blonde babysitter who has an outgoing brunette friend that causes problems because Annie in Halloween is yelling at Michael Myers and flicking him off and doing some shit. Like, they've always got that loud talking brunette friend that causes more problems than they need to when the virginal blonde-ish babysitter is trying to be a good person and not fuck with Bob because Bob's got balls, even though she's got a crush on Bob.
So,
real quick,
friends
the one
cause the
comparison. I'm sorry, Bill. Oh, Will. Sorry, I call him Bill.
Bill.
My bad. The one comparison I got from this from Annabelle is that like it's a combination of a lot of like movies like putting together, right? So like it's part Pinocchio, right? Because he makes dolls, right? Then the thing that happens with the daughter is definitely taken from Pet Sematary, right? With the whole thing that happens. Right, and then a part of it is Master of Puppets, like the Puppet Master. You ever seen the horror movie where it's like, no?
Andre Toulon's Puppet Man.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That had to do
So-
with Nazis and shit, and that was nothing like this.
I know, but like,
let him tie it together, Matt.
somebody trying to control controlling the.
You know what? Fuck it. I'm shutting up. Explain to me how Annabelle is like
Nazis.
Blade, Nazis, Pinhead, an assortment of puppets made by a man.
I mean,
who brought
have you
them
seen the way
to
she
life.
walks? I mean, she walks like a Nazi.
She doesn't walk. That's the thing. She doesn't walk.
I know. I was just trying to continue my comparison, but yeah, but that's kind of what I got from.
Are demons Nazis? Is that what you're saying, Jess?
Whoa.
Listen, they did a lot of crazy shit, in their day. Who knows?
Fair enough. I mean, all around just bad guys.
Right.
Rounding
The
out.
majority of us could agree with that.
I mean, they're just
I know
generally.
Allison's a huge Gunther fan. I've heard that. So
Oh.
She keeps pestering me to write the Imperium article, and I'm like, oh, I'm not ready to pull that trigger yet. It's coming. I'm working on it.
It's all there. All the information is there.
I
Just
know.
saying.
Rounding out the Conjuring universe is The Nun. This one was kind of... Matt, you were implying that you thought maybe this might be the most important character in the series, right? Isn't that what you were saying?
Well, Ed and Lorraine Warren are the most important
okay, yeah,
characters.
yeah,
They're
I'm
the
sorry,
anchors,
yeah.
yes. However, the nun for me, Valak the demon, is the creepiest character. Visually, even with the CGI and everything. And then, again, I have a semi-religious background growing up, so the religious aspect, the church aspect. Again, there was World War II implications in this movie. Also, real quick, because I kind of brushed over, but the nun that was in the house in Annabelle Creation also visited the monastery that Valak ends up killing everyone because that's where her body is trapped and trying to escape, and does escape through Louise. I believe it was Louise or Louis. I think it was Louise. But anyway,
Frenchie.
Yeah, Frenchie. There you go. Who then the Warrens get the demon out of, and then that demon is kind of chasing them around and following them around, goes to Enfield, draws them in, all of this stuff, visions. So, but it's hard to say because, again, you brought it up. The demon, which we don't even really know a lot about, despite having 3 movies that has possessed Annabelle, versus Valak, who is a very clear character, have intertwined themselves throughout this entire franchise and are almost 2 equals at this point through what they've kind of created and their importance in the series. So
the tie-in with the Warrens, the tie-in for the story itself. You can help me clarify this because even I was having some trouble with it. How exactly does the story of the nun tie into Ed Lorraine Warren then? Because this was set, 30 years before the first Conjuring, right?
Well,
so
go ahead, Katie.
Go ahead,
You want
Katie.
to.
Yeah.
so Frenchie at the end of the Nun gets possessed by Valak. In the Conjuring, they show like the clip to the class or wherever they are speaking. The person who's possessed in that film is Frenchie.
And that is also... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, that is also the possession that they talk about, and the exorcism that they talk about that almost killed Lorraine, that made her almost stop doing these things. Yep. So...
Is this all tied into the vision that she saw for Ed's death, right? Because wasn't that all tied into the story, too? Because she saw how Ed was going to die?
Kind of. That was more so Valak, like, playing into Lorraine's fear of losing Ed. But Valak is the reason that, like Matt's saying, like, Lorraine almost died and quit doing all of this. And then that leads into the second movie where she's the main villain, whatever, arch nemesis.
They actually replay the bit from The Conjuring, but I think it's just like, it's not them teaching it. It's just like the video reel of Frenchie being exorcised in a post-credit scene in the Nun. So in the Nun, like, you see Frenchie come out, and then you see like the upside down cross poke out of his skin, and it's like, oh, okay, something's going on here. And then they explain, because Frenchie was this farmer and blah 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 and got here and all of these things, and they're like kind of telling you, okay, that person, if you paid attention in the first movie that they were talking about when the Perrin family came to talk to her, was the dude that ended up taking Valak out of the monastery and bringing them into the Warrens' life. And so it's all, that's why I said they're almost 2 equals, because while Annabelle has more movies and more appearances than Valak, Valak is kind of, as you talked about through the timeline, strewn throughout their lives, because once they've exorcised Frenchie, this thing is kind of finding ways to attack them and come for them.
Yeah.
So, taking my perspective of saying that the demons, entities throughout the series, I guess that does make Valak and I guess that would be a more finite explanation of who I said was the most important then, because Valak would be there throughout most of it. The Curse of La Llorona was specific with the Annabelle series. It was tied into that story, but it was specific to the groundskeeper of the story, right? What was his name? It's Father Perez.
Yeah,
Father Perez.
Yeah. Did you guys watch that one?
I've seen it once. It's been a while.
Yeah, I've seen it once.
I've seen it twice. Also been a while. Not my favorite in the series, because even though, and that was the point I was trying to make earlier. So the connection here is only Father Perez, and taking a priest, taking a nun, taking, an ancillary character from another movie, and then going off on a journey with them. I don't have a connection with Father Perez, even getting into this section for the Curse of La Llorona. La Llorona. Listen, I practiced it when I was sending it to him, and then I've been practicing it here for when I had to say it, and I still fuck it up every time. But La Llorona. Anyway, Llorona. It's actually in Hispanic culture a very prominent
folklore.
tale. It's a very big folklore that they touched on here. But again, I didn't even realize it was really part of the Conjuring universe until I realize that it was. Like, it didn't feel like the other movies, and because Father Perez was the only one that was tying them together, it didn't. It's that, like I said, it's exactly what I was talking about. Like, that is not enough to continue a series on. Like, you can't just have ancillary characters investigating ghosts around the world and be like, oh, it's part of the universe because you saw him in this movie one time. It's not enough. That's why Ed and Lorraine are the linchpin.
Right.
Yeah.
Is this one of those situations like with Halloween 3, where it had to do with the witches? It's the same universe, but really didn't have anything to do with the Michael Myers story. Whereas the Curse of La Lorena, if you took it outside of the Conjuring, Llorona.
You speak Spanish.
I do, but right now I'm.
Yeah, I know.
But right now
Vince is gonna be disappointed in you.
He's super disappointed. He was talking dirty to me in the chat, and I ignored him. I'm sorry,
He
Vince.
fucking was.
He left.
Is this one of those stories where if you took it away and you didn't have anything about The Conjuring, like, do you think it would be good as a standalone movie on its own?
Yeah.
Like, it's a good story, like, especially because it is okay, Matt disagrees, but it's more, I like the story behind it, like the fact that it is a very well-known folklore in Hispanic cultures and stuff like that.
Yes.
It very well could. I just, it's just one of those things where, like Matt said, you kind of just forget that it is a part of the universe because only fucking Father Perez is there, and he's not even in the whole movie, if I can remember.
Right. I mean, to be honest, even though I like the folklore and everything, how it ties into the culture, I could do without it, to be honest. It doesn't really push the movies forward other than just having the one character, you know? But that's, I mean, because you don't see anything else like in the other movies from that series, so.
Just loosely tied to the entity.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Just loosely, like, he's getting the stuff because of the doll, but there's really no other reference to the doll, right?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. All right, guys.
It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite in the franchise at all.
Oh, mine either.
There's only two of us that... Oh, sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I honestly like I said, I love James Wan because he also did Insidious. He's done Lights Out. He's done a lot of really good horror. We got into a point where he was producing and not directing, and La Llorona was one of those movies where he didn't direct, he produced. And I honestly, like, whether it's connected to the Conjuring universe or not, I don't feel like if it was separate, I would like it anymore. Whereas Halloween, to your point, 3 has kind of built a cult following. I don't think that this movie is going to build at any point a cult following where it's going to be, in some circles, the most beloved of the universe. I really don't see that. So,
I mean, it definitely would never rise to the cultness of Halloween 3. But, like, I understand it's not my favorite movie in the universe either at all. Like, again, completely forgot it was even in the universe. I mean, like I said, it wasn't like a terrible movie. I like the premise behind it, but if you just put it against all these other movies, it doesn't hold up.
All right. The three of us have said who we thought the most important person or entity in the films were. Katie, you haven't yet. Who do you think the anchor character in the entire series is?
Oh, it's actually Chucky.
100% Chucky.
It's 100% Chucky. I think it's the Warrens because they have some connection to every. Again, besides Curse of La Llorona, but like that's besides the point. But like they have some connection to the rest of the movies, and they're kind of the reasons why these things are happening, and can fix and or save the people that are infected by these demons.
Al, I know you have a very you kind of have the same vibe, but you have a different explanation for your answer because we've already talked about it. Who is the most important character in the series?
I think it is Lorraine specifically. As a clairvoyant, like the demons are attracted to her. They do the things to her. Ed is the one that like makes it all go away, but she's the one that is attracting everything. Everything is attracting to her, and that's using her daughter to get to her.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
All right, guys. I think we've done about all the damage we can do for one night. Talking about horror movies and such. I appreciate y'all stopping by. Let's plug our stuffs and go home. Miss Katie Kinsey, I'm going to start with you. Plug your stuff.
You can follow me on Twitter at KatieRasson13. The link to I'm about to get all things She Leads Showcase, twitch.tv/She Leads Showcase, typically Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, youtube.com/She Leads Showcase. I say watch your videos because they're way more entertaining. Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, if you want to listen. She Leads Showcase is the weekly podcast show. Oh my god. Sorry, things are happening. Like I said, She Leads Showcase is the weekly podcast I do. Inside the Mind of is an interview series I do. The latest one with Krista B from Those Wrestling Girls is out. I just did one with Joey from the Angle Podcast. That'll be out next Monday. And there's a bunch of other shows up on the channel if you want to go check them out.
Allison got the creepiest doll. Just
That's
for
all
the
I got.
people who can't see it. Juss,
That's all I got.
plug your stuff, sir. And thank you, Katie, as always.
Yo, you can find me on Getcho Podcast on Twitter, Getcho Podcast on Instagram. If you can't find me there, you can find me on Marks and Mikes. I just dropped an episode with my homegirl Jizzy talking about adult shit called Lechon Diaries, so that's going to be up right now. So, yeah, check me out.
Mr. Ritter.
And as always, you can follow me at Matt Ritter, ZMATTRIDDER on Twitter only. Also, getting off. If you're into the horror and you want to check out more horror, come check that out. Katie, Reek, Justin, and I are going to drop something next Saturday. I just still don't know what it is. Today's still Sunday, so next Saturday. This upcoming Saturday, the next one. The next Saturday, we'll be live talking either Christmas horror movies or doing a watch along to a Texas Chainsaw Massacre porn parody. I really need to figure out what we're doing.
We really do.
Yeah, so we'll work that out. But that is that. Getting off on Twitter only. Creation World is a banner under which the Smackin It Raw podcast exists. You can follow them on Twitter and Instagram at It's Creation World, ITSCREATIA World, or creationworld.com or facebook.com/Creation World to get everything that we do. Getting off, Smackin It Raw, hashtag Them Dragons, Creation Conversation, Super Flash Year of Tomorrow, or Creation Comics now. All those things. Go check it out.
Miss Siegel.
You can find me at JustAGirl918 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I am at 520 TikTok followers. So close to 1,000. We're halfway there, people. But yeah, follow me. I've got some stuff. Working on a couple of my own solo projects, so that should be fun.
Woo. I appreciate you guys coming by and hanging out with me. I know much more about wrestling than I do horror movies, but I still like talking about them. They're still fun.
Love horror movies.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So
Thanks for the invite.
absolutely, I appreciate it. But now, as we close another episode of Botched Bots and Share Shots, I want to take a minute and thank you for listening. Remind you to go wherever you do anything on the internet, like, follow, subscribe, unsubscribe, then subscribe again. Leave a comment telling me how great I am or how terrible I sound. Either way, it helps the algorithm and it helps find new listeners. If you're feeling really generous and be one of the VIP people, head over to Rivet City Radio on Patreon and donate to the Rivet City Radio Podcast Network. You get some fantastic swag. We get some fantastic guests. It's a win-win. For Katie Wrestling 13, for Getcho Podcast, for MATTRIDDER, Matt Ritter, and for Just a Girl 918, I am the Will Gray. Thanks for stopping by and listening, my people.